Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main areas of weakness Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool currently possess and how Mikel Arteta's Arsenal can exploit them ahead of Sunday's high-profile clash. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on Liverpool's right side, then we'll shift to their issues with midfield transitions, and then in between those two issues, we'll break down how Arsenal's shape can exploit that Liverpool backline. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have Liverpool in a 4-3-3, and the only other shape that we can see them shifting to here is a 4-2-3-1, but that would probably see Fabinho playing in a number 10 role because they would need a disciplined attacking midfielder to sit on Thomas Partey to ensure that they aren't overloaded in that central area. And from there, you could possibly see Jota or Darwin Núñez starting up front. If Liverpool do play in the 4-3-3 as expected, the only other changes that we can see is if Klopp looks to go with Darwin or Jota ahead of Fabinho, and then you could see Milner or Elliott playing in that midfield zone if one of Henderson, Fabinho, or Thiago is unavailable to play. So when we focus on Liverpool's first major issue, it's down that right-hand side, and many have tipped Martinelli and Alexander-Arnold to be the key battle down that area. One, because Alexander-Arnold has been highly profiled for his lack of defensive effort and defensive capabilities in that right-back role. And down that left-hand side, Arsenal possess a quick, tricky winger that has enjoyed a positive season. Martinelli against Alexander-Arnold should favor Martinelli, but what we've seen this season is that although Alexander-Arnold has been highly critiqued, in 1v1 situations, he's done a fairly decent job dealing with the attacking wide player. Yes, there have been situations where he has failed to win his individual battle, but for the most part, he has this knack of sticking out his trailing leg and ensuring that the wide player can't get beyond him. In this example, you witness Bergwijn running at Alexander-Arnold, and you see that there's no protection to his right or left. Alexander-Arnold looks to force Bergwijn to the outside, but Bergwijn looks to cut on towards his right foot, and from there you see Alexander-Arnold sticking out his trailing leg and ensuring that he wins possession, and from there he halts the attack and is able to push Liverpool forward. And then as Napoli look to break, focus on Liverpool's high line and Alexander-Arnold's positioning. You can see that the winger is looking to take him 1v1, but there's not enough space down that touchline, so he instantly steps in to put his foot into the challenge. He wins the ball and he ends up helping Liverpool retain possession in the midfield zone. And while Trent has shown a knack of holding up in 1v1 situations this season, he's also been capable of holding up the transitional break by stepping into markers, forcing them wide or forcing them away from goal, and then allowing cover pressure to drop into their position, and then that forces the attacking player to play the ball laterally or drop it back in towards their teammates. On the flip side, Martinelli's impact has often been in central areas where he's been able to get himself into a legitimate goal-scoring position to impact the game. And in 1v1 situations, he's been highly frustrating, and this was most recently witnessed in Arsenal's 3-1 loss to Man United, when he struggled to get the better of Dalot in several 1v1 situations. What you often see from Martinelli is that when he gets into that left channel position in the final third, he often makes the wrong decision by forcing a pass, or he'll drag defenders towards him and then try to beat them in 1v2s, and that has been one of the issues that Martinelli has faced this season, despite his impressive goal-scoring threat when he receives the ball in central areas. Ultimately, the biggest issue that Liverpool have encountered down that right-hand side is the lack of protection for Alexander-Arnold, and it's not that they're incapable of doing it. You could see several examples where you have the shuttler in Henderson or Elliott, or even at times Milner providing protection for Alexander-Arnold, and at times you even see Mo Salah dropping off a bit deeper. However, what ends up happening is that when you look at Liverpool's shape, the 4-3-3 ends up seeing Salah stepping towards the opposing side's fullback, but there are times where he is caught higher up the pitch due to the fact that they don't want to put too much defensive responsibility in his hands from the back, so they often have the midfield shuttler shifting across to close down the fullback, as we see in several 4-3-3 situations. However, when the shuttler is caught in central areas, that's where you often see the fullback taking a gamble, or at times even the wingback taking a gamble by pushing forward. And when Alexander-Arnold has struggled this season, it's often been down to overloads down that side. You don't have Salah or the shuttler shifting across to provide protection, so it's often a 2v1 scenario. Here you see Milner and Salah getting sucked into the central area to try to win the ball off the United left back. But what the United left back does well here is that he drops the ball off into the path of Lisandro, and here you could see Alexander-Arnold in a good position. But Lisandro locates that two Liverpool players are coming towards him, and from there he looks to slide the ball into the path of Elanga. From there you now have a 2v1 because Elliott and Salah got sucked in towards the United centre back, and from here United play a simple 1-2 around Alexander-Arnold, who is now caught flat-footed, and it places Elanga in a position where he could pull the ball back into the path of Jadon Sancho, and that resulted in United's opener. If we look to another example, you witness Elliott engaging in a midfield battle in central areas, and he ends up losing it, and that's where you see the ball being looked to be shifted out towards the left channel. From there, you're expecting it to go to the wing back, but it goes in towards the marker ahead of Alexander-Arnold. From here, Alexander-Arnold backs off to try and slow down the Brighton player from sliding the ball out to the wing back. And what ends up happening is that he's still capable of doing that because Elliott doesn't recover in time. And that pass ends up bypassing Alexander-Arnold, and it forces Matip to now leave his marker and come across. And because neither player anticipated that or Liverpool didn't have cover, this creates a legitimate goal-scoring opportunity with the ball being played in toward the 6-yard area. But luckily for Klopp, Van Dijk slides across desperately and he ends up halting the attack. And even if you have Alexander-Arnold pushing out towards the wide player, the right center back has to be prepared for the run of an attacking midfielder, a shuttle run from deeper positions, or a central forward running into that zone. In those situations, when the ball is played around Alexander-Arnold, Liverpool's right center back has struggled to get across to provide cover, and from there it presents a free passing lane in towards the penalty area. Here you see Brighton looking to break down the left channel with Alexander-Arnold backpedaling, and they look to play the ball out towards the wing back. From here you do have a 1v1 and focus on Henderson and Fabinho. As the Brighton wingback looks to run at Alexander-Arnold, you can see Henderson isn't tracking the midfield run. And from here, the Brighton wingback simply has to play the ball around Alexander-Arnold. It pulls out Matip, and now it just leads to a simple ball across the 6-yard area. And luckily for Liverpool here, Van Dijk does enough to get across to force a corner. In this example, you witness Mo Salah getting sucked in towards the left center back. And watch how Brighton build their attack from here. The left center back easily runs across Salah, who gets sucked in towards the challenge. And now you can see Elliott getting sucked in towards the ball, and that's where the left center back could split the midfield duo to play the ball into the path of the Brighton attacker. And you can see the 2v1 down Alexander-Arnold's side. Alexander-Arnold gets sucked into the runner moving narrow, and that's where the ball's played out in towards the wide area. And here, even though you have a 2v2, Matip switches off. Alexander-Arnold can't close in time, and the ball is played around Alexander-Arnold into the path of the attacking player, who now looks to shift the ball towards the 6-yard area, and it ends up flashing through that zone, but it falls into the path of Trossard, who's able to fire a first-time effort beyond Alisson to level the game. If you look at it from an Arsenal perspective, if they shift to a 3-2-5, you could see Liverpool being pulled out of position just based off recent evidence. You could have Gabriel pushing forward and Salah stepping in towards him, and then Xhaka pushing higher up the pitch to occupy the right central midfielder. From there, the ball can be played out into the path of Martinelli, and then you could have the overlapping or underlapping run from the fullback to create that overload against Alexander-Arnold. The forward runs of Xhaka or even the threat of Gabriel Jesus in towards that wide zone can present a threat in behind Alexander-Arnold. And the other option that Arsenal could look towards is that if they have the left back pushing forward, they could drag away Salah, look to play the ball in towards Martinelli, and then have that combination with Gabriel Jesus or Xhaka shifting over to create the overload from that angle. What we've often seen this season is that teams have looked to drag Salah higher up the pitch, pull him out of play with a pass, and then you often see the right central midfielder stuck in a narrow position in that midfield zone, which then leaves Trent Alexander-Arnold vulnerable for an overload down that left-hand side, and teams have successfully targeted that side of the pitch due to the fact that he has had no protection. Once again, when we shift to Brighton, it's Salah getting caught ahead of the left center back, and focus on the 2v1 with Elliott caught central. The left center back carries the ball towards Elliott to drag him out of position, and here they slide the ball out towards the left-hand zone. You have the 2v1 with Elliott looking to recover, and Matip can't shift across because of the forward ahead of him. Here you have the 2v1 overload. They play the ball across Alexander-Arnold, and the runner breaking towards the byline is able to play the ball towards the 6-yard area. And now it's a battle that Van Dijk has to shift towards, but he can't get towards it in time, and that results in a knotted effort that forces an Alisson save. Against Ajax, you witness Salah stepping towards the ball, and here you could see the two shuttlers and Alexander-Arnold caught out of position. Liverpool had lost possession, and now you see Elliott looking to shift across it for cover, but the ball is played around him. Thiago doesn't get stuck tight. Fabinho's taken out of the game because he also steps towards the ball, and from here now the ball is played in towards the left channel, and that results in Matip now being pushed towards the touchline. The ball is knotted over him, and now you can see a runner breaking in beyond Van Dijk. Luckily for Liverpool here, the final pass is a bit short, and Van Dijk's able to come across to cover. The other issue that Liverpool has encountered this season has been teams targeting the space in behind Alexander-Arnold. Now, yes, there have been situations where his positioning has been poor from a defensive aspect in and around his penalty area. However, when you dissect some of the issues that Liverpool have encountered, a lot of it is in transition, and it's due to the sloppy play in that midfield zone. When you look at Liverpool's shape, they often have both fullbacks pushing higher up the pitch, and then they have Fabinho dropping off just ahead of the center back. In that situation, you're expecting Liverpool to shift into a 3-man backline or simply have one of the fullbacks pushing forward so that the center back can shift across the pitch to provide cover for Alexander-Arnold. You do witness rotation down that right-hand side. For instance, if Alexander-Arnold isn't hugging the touchline, then you'll see Salah drifting in towards that zone, and then Alexander-Arnold will occupy the half spaces. And there's times where Alexander-Arnold sits deeper in the half space. You have Henderson hugging the touchline and Salah drifting into central areas, or vice versa. However, what often happens is that when Alexander-Arnold at times is pushing forward into advanced positions, there's no protection from the shuttler, and that results in the center back shifting across late because he's not already in that zone. So what you see is a huge gap of space for teams to exploit, and in several situations this season when Liverpool has lost possession, you've seen teams instantly looking to punt balls in towards that zone, and that drags out the center back because Fabinho or the holding midfielder can't get across in time. The other issue that Liverpool have is that when they do lose possession, you often see that all three midfielders are caught out of position, or the two shuttlers are caught higher up the pitch, and all it takes is the opposition to play one pass across the holding midfielder for the opposing side to break in towards that space in the channels. But Liverpool here have both fullbacks pushed higher up the pitch, their shuttlers are pushed higher up the pitch, and several games this season in which Liverpool have conceded goals, it's often stemmed from them losing balls in that midfield area, and then teams looking to punt balls in towards that space and behind Alexander-Arnold, or simply looking to run at Alexander-Arnold because there is no protection for him out in those zones, and that's where they get numbers to create the overloads, or simply get runners to break in beyond the Liverpool backline to stretch out the center backs to get themselves into legitimate goal scoring positions. In the build-up to Crystal Palace's opener, you could see that Alexander-Arnold and Fabinho are caught towards as he receives a clearance, and he does a very good job of running by both players, and from here you could see that Liverpool's midfielders are caught out of position because they were attacking high, and now Eze's one goal is to play the ball around the center backs for the run of Zaha breaking in between them. He simply wraps the ball into the space that's left vacant and not covered for Alexander-Arnold pushing forward. It places Zaha in this position where he can go 1v1 against Alisson, and that results in Zaha carrying the ball in towards the penalty area and finishing coolly around the Brazilian goalkeeper. And then against United, you have Alexander-Arnold pushing forward. He delivers a cross in towards the penalty area, but it's cleared and focused on the positioning of the Liverpool midfield. The clearance simply goes into the path of Henderson, who has to win this ball because the shuttlers are pushed higher up the pitch. He doesn't win the ball, and that results in Martial getting across Van Dijk with his first touch. And now because the fullbacks are pushed higher up the pitch and there's no cover, now all Martial has to do is hold off Henderson's pressure, which he does well, and slide the ball across Gomez for Rashford breaking free 1v1. And from this position, he controls the ball calmly with his first touch, and then takes his second touch to beat Alisson from a tight angle at the near post. Therefore, when you focus on how Arsenal can harm their backline, we've witnessed them in a few games this season possession, scoring goals or getting into legitimate goal scoring positions when they've won possession in their own half, and utilize their speed in attack to break in and beyond the space that the opposing sides leave for them in transition, and from there they're capable of punishing backlines when they get into those zones. On the other hand, with a large emphasis on their wide areas, on this channel in depth we've broken down how they do look to rotate in those wider areas, and look no further than their win against Spurs last weekend, where they look to get the ball in towards the right side or the left side and then quickly switch play over to the opposite flank to create those overloads with overlapping runs. And there shouldn't be a surprise if they look to exploit that threat, specifically down Liverpool's right hand side, where they'll try to drag the central midfielder and Salah higher up the pitch and narrow, and then try to get runners in around Alexander Arnold to place teammates in legitimate goal scoring positions.
So as you can see, while Alexander Arnold shouldn't be excluded from blame for Liverpool's defensive issues, it's clear that minimal protection for the fullback has presented several issues for Klopp's backline, along with their lack of midfield dynamism to cover ground in central areas once they concede possession.